Happy Tax Slavery Day. It's not just CNN that hates America. It's the Democrat Party of the United States of America that also hates this great republic. And you can see that from their representatives and their leaders. They prefer to side with child abducting, pillaging, and violating leaders of foreign, what President Trump has now designated as foreign terrorist organizations, MS13, than they do about the safety and security of their own constituents. Here's Exhibit A. Democrat leader Hakeem Jeffries on MSNBC last night.
To intensify the pressure on the Trump administration to comply with the Supreme Court's directive, and the Supreme Court and or the federal district court actually needs to enforce its order. And the vehicles that are available for the court to do that relate to contempt.
I don't know about you, but this smells like desperation, contempt. Yeah, and they want to get somebody. They want to get somebody. Listen to Hakeem Jeffries. They'll go after anybody. They'll pin it on anybody just so they can keep this going forward. What a losing strategy.
And that contempt can be directed at a variety of different members of the Trump administration, including but not limited to the Secretary of State and or his or her designees, and the Secretary of Homeland Security and or his or her designees for the court to determine.
Man, these asswipes need to be politically correct in every single moment. We know the proper pronouns. Marco Rubio is the Secretary of State. It's him. And we know the Secretary of Department of Homeland Security is Kristi Noem. And it's hers. Her.
It sounds like you're saying you think the court should hold some members of the administration in contempt. Anyone else you want to mention there?
Even Jen Psaki gets it. And I'm low-key thinking she might be trolling a little bit Hakeem Jeffries. He's like, seems like somebody should pay the price. You want to mention anybody else in that mix? Now, Jen Psaki is definitely not on our side. But you got to respect her for being a smart woman and a crafty one at that.
Well, I think what the court needs to do is to set a deadline as it relates to compliance with the quasi-directive that came down from the Supreme Court related to returning Mr. Garcia. Specify that and then make sure that it happens.
In other words, the Supreme Court is now over foreign policy. Yes, I've said it once. I've said it a million times. I've used props like this. The Constitution means nothing to these people. They literally wipe their asses with our Constitution and defecate on it. What about separation of powers? The judiciary, even the highest court of the land, the Supreme Court, does not have power to conduct foreign policy. And that's what it takes to get back Mr. Abrego Garcia. Oh, they love Abrego Garcia. These people are crooks. For a long time, I was like, how these people side with crooks, whether it's George Floyd or MS13 folks like Abrego Garcia. And it's because these are murderous crooks themselves. These are drug-addicted perverts themselves. And that is why when one of theirs actually becomes accountable for their crimes, they feel that in their empty souls. That's the only one of, that and money and power and just doing what they're told because they're puppets. I know all that. But the passion and the vigor with which they advocate for hardened criminals over innocent people should tell you exactly how dark their souls and hearts are. And it's not just Hakeem Jeffries. Oh, no. This is a sickness that's pervasive throughout the Democrat Party. Listen to what Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen said about what he's willing to do to bring back one of his constituents, one of his Marylanders, back to Maryland. He also wants to conduct foreign policy, not to protect the innocent victims of the gang known as MS13. No, to bring him home, because Trump won't do it.
I saw the comments of President Bukele, and I look forward to meeting with him. I've requested to meet with him. I reached out to the ambassador here to ask to meet while he's here. But I've also made clear if we can't meet here, I do intend to go to El Salvador to discuss the release of this individual who is illegally detained. A Maryland man who's the father of 3 in a notorious prison in El Salvador.
Senator Van Hollen would have you believe that this is a Maryland American citizen dying and suffering in a horrible condition jail in El Salvador. Abrego Garcia is a Salvadoran citizen who was in Maryland illegally. He is in his home country, in a prison in his home country, because he is a hardened criminal. He is a leader of MS13. But no, they play the heartstrings, the pathos argument, a father of 3.
And I believe the president of El Salvador will recognize why it's important to allow him to return to the United States of America, because it is absolutely unjust and illegal to have this Marylander detained one more day in a notorious prison in El Salvador.
Let me get this straight, Senator. You are going to conduct foreign policy and tell the president of El Salvador, who is already on the record and saying he's not going to do it because it would essentially be smuggling and kidnapping I think he used the word smuggling, a terrorist into the United States. He just won't do it. He already said that. But you, Van Hollen, you are such a negotiator that you're going to be able to do what President Trump didn't do, and he's going to listen to you and your reason. Wow, that is some hubris.
Of course, President Trump could have just said, bring him home. Of course he could have done that. But this is an administration that has lied about Mr. Abrego Garcia, right? The vice president of the United States tweeted out that he had a criminal record. That was a lie. They're just lying. They've gotten caught lying. They don't want to admit it. And they have an obligation to bring him home. But I will say the president of El Salvador should not now take it upon himself to say that he is detaining him for one more day, because that is kidnapping. I understand that the Attorney General said that we would provide a plane to bring him home. So all the president of El Salvador has to do now is hand over and release an innocent man and let him come home to his family.
An innocent man who was found not once but twice before immigration court proceedings to be a member of MS13 and a criminal, and not here legally. Let's say this guy was the jewel of his community. He is still in the country illegally and doesn't have the right to be brought back. And you especially don't tell the president as a senator, you don't tell the president of another country what to do. But hey, this is celebrated. And I showed you that. Let's go back and conclude with Hakeem Jeffries referencing Van Hollen here and his actions. And you'll see that these people all agree that an illegal alien MS-13 leader, let me repeat this again, a foreign national terrorist from El Salvador and a leader of a notorious international murderous gang whose motto is kill, rape, control, or rape, kill, control, one of those. Don't know the exact word. I know control is the last word. That this individual merits time, energy, and resources to defend by going to his home country and telling his president in his country where he is detained that he should come back to America. Because these bastards, Hakeem Jeffries and Senator Van Hollen, consider him a constituent of Maryland. Wow, just wow. Watch this. Let me play this last clip for you.
And at the same period of time, I think, as you've seen, and there's been some great leadership from Senator Chris Van Hollen, who apparently indicated earlier today that either his constituent is returned or he plans to go to El Salvador himself. And that's exactly the type of action that, as members of Congress, we can do to highlight the injustice, dramatize and amplify it, and force the administration to comply, which in this instance, I believe we will make sure happens.
Imagine if these evil people actually cared about American citizen voters and their citizen and legal resident constituents as much as they did, and as much as they seem to be fighting and going crazy over defending illegal alien criminals like Abrego Garcia. Okay, now here's the latest, and I'll show you that this is all a coordinated plot by the Democrats. Treasonous, traitorous, rat bastards that they are. Attorneys for deported MS13 gang leader Abrego Garcia makes new demands, or the attorneys make new demands. Judge Paula Zinnes is setting the stage to hold Trump officials in contempt. What did we just hear? What did we just hear from Hakeem Jeffries? This is all coordinated. They are all on the same trajectory. They're all in on the same scheme, plot, conspiracy, whatever you want to call it. Attorneys for Kilmar Abrego Garcia demanded the Trump administration comply with the Supreme Court order and release MS-13 gang member from the CCOT prison. In a new court filing today, Tuesday, Abrego Garcia's attorneys said the Trump administration has to at least request his release from the CCOT prison and help facilitate his return from El Salvador. The attorney said there is no evidence that anyone has requested the release of Abrego Garcia. To give any meaning to the Supreme Court's order, the government should at least be required to request the release of Abrego Garcia. To date, the government has not done so, the attorneys wrote. The Trump DOJ is currently arguing the meaning of facilitate as it relates to immigration cases in response to the Supreme Court order. Okay, we know that these things are coordinated, these lawfare attacks against President Trump and his administration and his agenda, which of course, by extension, since he was duly elected by the people, not just by the Electoral College, which is all that matters, but also by popular vote. So therefore, a majority of Americans want President Trump and want his agenda, but that's okay. The left and their minions and their puppets are all going to subvert the will of the people. And it is not at all a conspiracy theory. It's actually actual fact. And we can thank California Democrat Congresswoman Laura Friedman for getting out there and just voicing and confirming what we know to be true, that these lawfare attacks are coordinated by Democrat legislators with AGs at the different states to fight against President Trump and bring these suits. And just in case you had any doubt that she was a crazy Democrat leftist, it's always in their eyes. Look, it's always in their eyes. These crazy ass people are bat crap crazy, and you can always see it in their eyes. So let me play you this. This is from the Congresswoman addressing and speaking to voters, bragging about how House Democrats have established a so-called litigation working group. You can also call it, I don't know, a shadow government.
Every single week, we have a litigation working group where a large group of us, and I'm talking there's maybe 75 members of the House, sit down every single week with the AGs to talk about legal strategy. This is all going on every single week behind the scenes. It is nonstop talk, nonstop introduction of bills and legislation, nonstop being on social media as much as we can without being throttled and without the crazy analytics, and doing all these things.
That right there, folks, those few seconds was all you needed to see to get an overview of the Democrat Party of today in this great republic, the United States of America. Bragging about coordinated efforts to undo the agenda and the will of the people undemocratically with lawfare and cooperating. Great. They meet together to suggest bills and legislation. That's their job. Everything else she talked about is extracurricular and smells of a shadow government, does it not? And then after she says all that, makes herself a victim because they can't share all of their stuff on social media because they're throttled. When everyone knows when it comes to social media, it's we on the right that are throttled and shadow banned and suppressed. Absolutely amazing. First bragging about subverting the will of the people, and then making herself a victim. If that doesn't smell like a Democrat and tell you everything you know about the Democrat psyche, I don't know what does, at least in just those few seconds. Okay, folks, but it's not just, and this is the very disconcerting part that we've known about for a long time, but now we've got some numbers behind this. It's not just these treasonous, traitorous rat bastards that we have supposedly elected in Democrat areas, but it's the influence of foreign money at the state level that is huge, a known problem. But now we've got some numbers to see exactly how big this problem actually is.
So now a growing number of states cracking down on election loopholes that allow foreign nationals to fund ballot measures. Whoa. Mark Meredith's got the scoop. He's live in Washington. What you find out, Mark? Hello.
Hey, Bill, good morning to you. Well, federal law already bans foreign nationals from donating to campaigns or political parties. But there's a loophole which allows money from outside the U.S. to influence statewide ballot initiatives. Now, a lot of states are trying to end that.
Now, folks, this is important because we are already ramping up for the 2026 midterms. And not only will we be voting for our representatives in the different branches of government, but we'll also, in many states, have these ballot initiatives and these ballot measures. And it is scary to think that at a state level, there is dark foreign money, and the loophole existed on purpose to allow this money to funnel in. Luckily, we've got President Trump and his administration, and they're trying to put a kibosh to all of this nonsense.
The Trump administration calls the loophole a major problem. It argues the exception allows foreigners to sway laws on everything from abortion to health care without people knowing who is funding the Get Out the Vote campaign.
Now, besides Scott Presler, who's done a great job, and we saw a lot more of this action under Laura Trump at the RNC as far as voter registration, which is the party of Get Out the Vote and register anybody that can breathe to register and vote as a Democrat. Oh yeah, I guess I just said the Democrat Party. So who have they been in cahoots with the last several cycles, if not more? Foreigners, foreign entities, foreign countries, communists, Marxists that want to literally infiltrate and have literally infiltrated our country via the Democrat Party.
And it's actually long been the case that foreign nationals are prohibited from influencing our elections. But when we take a closer look at what that actually means, we realize that it's not very comprehensive, and it actually doesn't apply to ballot measures. That is a very dangerous and alarming foreign influence loophole.
A loophole, I contend, that's there on purpose, which we'll get to in just a moment. But let's talk about that number. Let's talk about 2024 alone. This last election cycle, did you know that half of our states had ballot initiatives to an extremely high amount of money from dark sources that were on the ballots? Half of our states had dark money, ballot money, to pass far left progressive measures.
So $100 million was spent by the 1630 Fund on ballot initiatives in 25 states. That's $100 million. That's according to the America First Policy Institute 2024 report. What kinds of state initiatives were they trying to influence? What's the topic?
Oh, I assure you, it wasn't voter ID laws. It wasn't pro-life initiatives. It wasn't anything that would be center or right of center.
So it's one thing to know that this is not a hypothetical situation. We have been able to trace that, over $100 million of foreign money has flown through the 1630 Fund in these states across the country, and they are working to implement some far left and extremist public policies on issues related to abortion, election law, and other things across the country. Drug policy. They are trying to sidestep the legislative process and get the most extreme version of public policy possible.
Now you're asking, I asked, and Dana Perino here asked her, why would they do this? Why dark money going to state ballot initiatives? Well, it's very obvious. Who won 2024? Our duly elected and beloved President Donald John Trump Why? Because the country is tired of the wokeism and has gotten their representatives from President Trump to, we have the majority in the House and the Senate, and in many state legislatures, they can't pass the laws of these hard left things. So what they do is they circumvent that process and go straight to the people. But I'll explain how that works in a second. Let's get back to this.
But why would they want that, Caitlin?
Well, because they know that their far left agenda often cannot withstand the scrutiny of a typical legislative process. So they are sidestepping the legislative process, and they are getting these extreme public policy measures on the ballot, and they're using foreign dark money to do it.
So how it works is this. They get these initiatives using the dark money on the ballots in the different states, and then the Democrat operatives go out and get the vote and get people to sign for this. And then what they do is they miscategorize these laws in the state level. So, for instance, let's say they'll say it's a reproductive rights thing, and write the law and the title of the law so it seems like it's the exact opposite of what it actually is. People will vote for it, not realizing, unfortunately, because we often have low information voting. And of course, you think the name of a bill, I don't know, like the Affordable Care Act, which is anything but affordable. They go, oh, it's this. And the people vote for that, not realizing, unfortunately, that they're often voting for leftist, hard left laws. Or they'll couple those in with other things, and they'll just make in legalese very obvious what the law is, but the layman's not going to understand what they're really trying to do there. So, they'll say things like, instead of a voter ID, they'll pass it off as like, access to voting or what have you. Just things like that they do. But here's the good news. There are some states fighting back against it, and it looks like Trump and the Republicans are aware of this and are trying to stop it in time for the 2026 midterm elections.
Last month, Kentucky's Democratic governor signed legislation banning the practice. Other states, Ohio, Maryland, Kansas, Wyoming, Indiana, all either enacting or trying to enact similar laws.
I'm no fan of Andy Beshear, the Democrat governor of Kentucky, but bravo for signing that bill into law in that state. And hopefully other states will do it as well, because we don't want our 50 United States to just be vassal states of communist China.
What's also the most alarming is that there's also nothing prohibiting other hostile or foreign adversaries from taking advantage of this same loophole. As it stands, there's certainly almost nothing stopping, the CCP from coming in and funding these ballot measures directly or indirectly.
Now, I want to get into some specifics here, and we'll have to thank the America First Policy Institute for this breakdown. But you can see that this got turbocharged under the administration of Obama 3.0, also known as the Biden-Harris regime. In 2021, the Federal Elections Commission ruled that foreign nationals can donate money to U.S. ballot initiatives, opening the door to foreign involvement in U.S. policy creation. How much more proof do you need that Joe Biden and his minions were all on the payroll of China and foreign adversaries? We're finding out more and more every single day, folks, about the evil of the last regime. To varying degrees, California, Colorado, Maryland, Nevada, North Dakota, Ohio, South Dakota, and Washington have all prohibited foreign money in ballot initiatives, but sometimes with a caveat that only foreign-owned or partially owned corporations are prohibited, not foreign individuals. A 2022 survey from the University of Maryland found that a strong bipartisan majority of 8 in 10 voters favor Congress banning foreign individuals and entities from spending money to influence ballot initiatives. And a 2024 report by Americans for Public Trust showed that almost $100 million was spent by one organization alone, the 1630 Fund, spanning ballot initiatives in 25 states. Now, because Fox News has been reporting on this specifically, this has been one of their big reports yesterday on Monday. The fund has come out and said, hey, we're not breaking any laws. We're following all the laws. And they are. They're taking advantage of these loopholes.
terrible problem.
Let me read this. This is a statement from the 1630 Fund to Fox. It says 1630 Fund is proud to support ballot initiative campaigns that are working to advance economic opportunity, reproductive rights, and democracy. Our donations to these initiatives are made in compliance with local, state, and federal laws.
They're taking advantage of these loopholes, and these loopholes must be closed. Make sure that you let your representatives and your senators know that you, whatever your state legislative body looks like, let your state legislators know and your governor know that you want no foreign dark money funding initiatives in your state, whether a foreign corporation or a non-U.S. foreign individual. It's critical to the future of our republic, the great United States of America.